In 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt came to Detroit to campaign for the presidency. 20,000 people showed up. That same afternoon, Joe Mendy, the most famous chimp, was performing at the zoo. Twice as many people came to see Joe. For nearly 40 years, he and other chimps entertained and delighted generations of Detroiters. In the 50s and 60s, you could also take a spin in a llama cart, amble along on the back of an Aldabra tortoise, or watch the elephant show. And while traditional zoos were still putting animals in sterile, tile-floored cages, putting too many animals in too small a space, the Detroit Zoo was building natural-looking habitats, open areas, without cages and bars. One little boy who especially loved the open exhibits was Doc Wilson.
My father was enamored with the place, as I was. I never thought that I'd ever work out here. We came to what they call Monkey Island, I guess they still do, and my father thought this was about the greatest exhibit that he ever saw in his life, the greatest thing he ever saw in his life.
Doc Wilson did work here. After years as a veterinarian, he was appointed director of the Detroit Zoo.
I think this is sort of a spiritual food for the visitor, and I would like them to have that feeling when they go. Little ones, children, I would like them to have a sense of respect for the animal, a sense of love. I really wasn't too interested in whether the Latin name was right. I didn't worry about pedigrees of animals, but I think that I was a director for my time.
In the 60s and 70s in Detroit, television and animals meant Sonny Elliott.
How do, and welcome to the wondrous and internationally famous Detroit Zoo, where the elephants have unpacked their trunks, the rattlesnakes...
This zany personality introduced hundreds of thousands of people to wildlife.
I enjoyed doing what we called At the Zoo, a half-hour program that we did once a week. And in 17 years, I learned enough to find out things that I thought I'd never learn, like an elephant's eyelashes are 5 inches long, that their polar bears have hair in the bottom of their feet. It's an amazing kind of learning experience that's joyful at the same time.
This was also a time when our attitude toward wildlife began to change. We were questioning our relationship with other species and whether we had the right to train wild animals for our own amusement. Wildlife programming on television had a lot to do with our changing attitudes. For the first time, we were watching animals running free in the wild. And as it became more fascinating to see the natural behaviors of wildlife, the animal shows became part of the zoo's past. At the same time, beyond the natural-looking habitats, beyond the eyes of the public, remarkable achievements were taking place at the zoo. With a unique team of zoologists, physicians, veterinarians, and research specialists, the Detroit Zoo began a struggle to preserve some rare and endangered species. Bill Austin was a member of that unique team, fulfilling a lifelong dream to be part of the zoo movement. He served as education curator at the Detroit Zoo for many, many years.
When I first began working in this, the endangered species was not a term that you ever heard. Let's talk about shortage of animals. Animals at one time were fairly common, suddenly became much more difficult to get. We didn't realize at the time what the significance of this really was. And we did not realize that we were literally depleting a reservoir.
It was here that the world's first incubated ostrich egg was hatched, and where one of the first captive polar bears was born. The Detroit Zoo continues to be part of a cooperative effort between zoos. They have rescued some species like the scimitar-horned oryx from the edge of extinction. Today, modern zoos are linked by a common goal: to preserve the wildlife that still exists. There are just 1,000 zoos in the world today, and they, like the Detroit Zoo, have become a refuge, and in many cases the last refuge for some species. Current Detroit Zoo Director Ron Kagan believes we can all be a part of the solution.
The part for us that is so extraordinary is watching people fall in love with the world of nature. And when people see the polar bears swimming underwater, which is not something you can do in the wild, and when people stand in the butterfly and hummingbird garden and have these magical creatures flittering around you, they are so awed by the world of nature, and I think also intuitively understand how fragile nature is. Those are very, very important life lessons, and hopefully get translated into people's actions when they leave here.
With the world's natural habitats disappearing at a reckless speed, zoos may be the only place some large animals will exist in a few short years. The modern zoo calls us back to a time when the habitats were as bountiful as the animals who lived there. Zoos are the sanctuaries of our future, preserving and breeding the endangered among us. It's not just animals that you see here. You are witnessing an international effort to maintain wildlife. This place is a zoo, a sanctuary for animal and man alike. A magnificent celebration of all creatures, great and small.